Hey everyone, Django Fett here, hunting down games, comics, TV shows, movies, and more, and this is the first review of, hopefully, 6 videos for my Star Wars Tales review series, and this is Star Wars Tales Volume 1, which contains Tales number 1 to 4. And if you're unfamiliar with Star Wars Tales, it was a semi-Legends comic anthology series, and ran from 1999 to 2005, with a 24-issue total run. Each issue contained 4 to 5 stories per issue, done by different artists and writers from around the comic industry. Also, most of these stories are scattered throughout the Marvel Epic Collection, and there's no way I am telling each of the Epic Collections where it can be found, as it's way too difficult to pinpoint. Let's start with Tales number 1 with 4 stories in total, with the first story, Life, Death, and the Living Force. This is set 42 years before the Battle of Yavin, with Obi-Wan as a Padawan, learning from Qui-Gon through his unorthodox ways. Interesting story, in the end. Mara Jade, A Night on the Town is the next story. This story is written by Timothy Zahn and set 4 to 5 years after the Battle of Yavin. And in this story, Mara Jade is on an undercover mission and encounters General Crix Medine and ends up killing a traitor later on. Pretty good story with plenty of intrigue and subterfuge befitting Mara Jade's character. Extinction Part 1 and Part 2 is a two-parter story and reserves the second part to the next issue. I think this is the only story to have 2-parters of the Tales series, but I could be wrong. We will find out as we progress in the series. For the sake of this video, I'll just talk about both parts now instead of saving for issue 2. So this story is written by Ron Mars and drawn by Claudio Castellini. And in this you have Darth Vader meeting with Emperor Palpatine and also Mara Jade, who tells Vader of a former Jedi Master in hiding named the Dark Woman. Palpatine decides to send Vader, and Vader then gets in a cool duel with the Dark Woman, and some interesting foreshadowing dialogue between one another. Vader looking at a flower before their encounter, and the Dark Lady reminiscing that it's a dying species and one of the last of its kind, hinting it's just like the Jedi. Vader remarks extinction is a natural order of things, and weaker species are replaced by stronger ones. They get into this epic duel, and the Dark Lady gets a giant tree smashed on her, and Vader says, only now at the end can you see the power of the dark side. And she gets to him by saying, yes, the power to destroy, just as it destroyed Anakin Skywalker. And Vader does the final blow to her, and she appears as a Force ghost. Now things get a little weird from the comic issue to the actual volume as the dialogue changes in the end when the Dark Lady is a Force ghost. In the original version, her dialogue reads, Anakin, I see within you the power to release yourself from the dark side. No, I seek no release, and Anakin no longer exists. In the altered version, her dialogue reads, do you now see? Your might is nothing compared to mine. Remember, Skywalker, even a faint light brightens when it is surrounded by darkness. No one has officially explained why the dialogue was changed from the novel to the issue itself. Really substantial change. I've never seen that really before at all. Bears a strong resemblance to the prefaces in the Episode 3 novel. And the flower you see earlier gets destroyed in the end, and Vader walks away in an epic fashion. This is the highlight story from the 2 issues by far, and so worth experiencing alone. Also, the design of the Dark Lady being very nature-oriented, including her lightsaber, was really cool. Skippy the Jedi Droid is the last story of Tales number 1, and easily the worst, and it's non-canon too, so that helps. Taking place before and during Episode 4, and features Skippy from Episode 4, who you see explode in the background in the movie. And apparently this story must explain it in the most bizarre way, by saying Skippy could use the Force, which makes no sense whatsoever considering he's a droid. And thankfully not Legends canon. So it goes through his life in Episode 4, and he is picked up by Luke and gets a vision with Leia with cinnamon buns, which I thought was funny, the only good part of the story, and explodes on purpose to have R2-D2 picked instead. This was just nonsensical and a stupid story, but still worth reading yourself just to see how nonsensical it is. Now on to Tales number 2. We already did Extinction Part 2, so the next story is Routine, written by Tony Isabella and drawn by John Nadeau. This story is set 5 years before the Battle of Yavin and has Imperials on the Vigilant on border patrol duties, board most of the time, and stop a Corvette piloted by none other than Han Solo. They don't see anything out of the ordinary and let him go. Pretty neat and okay story. Stop That Jawa is written, penciled, inked, lettered, and colored by Dave Cooper, which shows a lot of commitment to do all of that. The guy did everything, and I have to appreciate that even more. So it stars Max Rebo, Cy Snoddles, and Droopy McCool from the Max Rebo Band, and this was just a funny story with really great cartoon artwork. I'm pretty sure this is Legends canon because I don't see how it affects the continuity in any way, but I am seeing nothing that refutes it. The next story is Incident at Horn Station. A rockbinder arrives at Horn Station to make repairs on a ship and tries to go on his way, but eventually goes into dueling positions and kicks butt with his interesting blaster. Moving on to Tales number 3, we start with The Death of Captain Tarples, written by Ryder Windham and drawn by Tom Fowler. This is a story to show how Jar Jar gets exiled from the Gungans before, the start of episode 1. If you're a fan of Jar Jar, you gotta read this. Deal with the Demon is written by John Ostrander and drawn by Jan Duursema, the dynamic duo behind many of the amazing Star Wars Legends works we know and have loved in the past. This story is set 33 years before the Battle of Yavin and stars Vilmar Grok, the conniving demon known for constantly backstabbing, and is asked to smuggle a princess. He of course betrays them and in the end saves them to get that sweet dough. A solid story, one of the many stories with Villy, believe it or not, within Legends. So you'll see Villy quite a bit with John Ostrander and Jan Duursema creating quite a lot of stories, which is awesome. Lady Luck is written by Rich Handley and Darko McCann and drawn by Chris Bruner. This is set 1 year before the Battle of Yavin, shows how Lando wins a game to get Cloud City. Pretty good story and explains why Lando has a ship called Lady Luck in later years. This was originally referenced in the Marvel Star Wars comics, but later expanded and explained in this short tale story. 3 Against the Galaxy is written by Rich Haiti and drawn by Rick Leonardi. This shows a Gamorrean guard named Grissom who mourns the loss of his family after the events of Return of the Jedi and runs into a woman named Arista, and he actually gets sent into prison. Arista gets saved by Grissom and finds out her uncle is behind an assassination attempt that killed her father. She wants revenge. Eventually they run into a Jawa named Teak, and they enact a plan to get to her uncle who betrayed her family for power. She gets her revenge by blowing up the mines, and they escape together off-world. This is one of the highlights and one of the best stories to read for this issue, and in this volume by far. And the artwork is also fantastic. It's also very interesting and different to see this perspective of a sympathetic Gamorrean and one who survived the events of Return of the Jedi. But lo and behold, the writer came up with a creative way for the story. And moving on to the final issue, Tales number 4 with 4 stories. The first one being A Moment of Doubt, or just Moment of Doubt, written by Lovern Kindazerski and drawn by Robert Teranishi, set 3 years after the Battle of Yavin with a bounty hunter named Aru Tark, answering Darth Vader's call to find the Millennium Falcon, only to find that Tark is not a bounty hunter, but someone who wants revenge on Vader and attacks immediately in an all-out assault. He surprises Vader, who doesn't know how to counter this monster at first, but slowly reaches into his mind to uncover his past. Vader finds out he attacked his homeworld and destroyed everything he knew and loved revolving around Tark. Decided to dedicate his life to revenge by sacrificing his body for cybernetics and slowly get to Vader. And Vader now understands why this was done and relates in a way. He kills Tark in one blow and honestly shocked over the entire encounter and wallows in this tragedy. Just a fantastic story. I honestly love seeing these visceral Vader stories. He meets a deadly foe and relates to this foe in the end and peels back his dark exterior to be more human. A Death Star is Born is a Kevin Rubio story. Kevin Rubio, if you didn't know, did the Tag and Bing stories, so we're in for a treat. And while this story is non-canon and not as funny as the later Tag and Bing series, it has its moments and well worth a read. Spare Parts is an extremely short story that pretty much shows C-3PO and R2-D2 getting captured by Jawas and tried to escape using disguises and failed in the end. And for the last story, this is Sandblasted, written and drawn by Killian Plunkett. He did the pencil work for the Shadows of the Empire comics, and you'll recognize some familiar faces from there, with Big Giz and Spiker from the story into here. So, Darth Vader and General Ram Moak test out the Dark Trooper project on a rebel ship. General Ram Moak was also in the Dark Forces video game. The rebels try to escape and are killed off before going into hyperspace and crash land on Tatooine, and you have no idea what happened. 3 years later, Big Giz, Spiker, and Ono are camped out in Tatooine. Big Giz and Spiker would be in Shadows of the Empire comics later on, and they witness sandcrawlers crashing, and blowing open the sandcrawler is the deadly Dark Trooper, a robotic assassin capable of single-handedly taking out bases and completing objectives that regular troopers could never do. They battle this machine, and it's practically unstoppable, but within the last inches of their lives, they take it out, and the machine is destroyed. Or is it? Another great story, and just shows the unstoppable nature of the Dark Troopers, and far more menacing in here than in the Mandalorian TV show. So I'm giving Star Wars Tales Volume 1 a... And that's Volume 1. A lot of great stories and a great start to the Tales stories. I think there was 2 or 3 stories that were okay to bad, but out of 16 stories, that's fantastic and great value. Pretty much 80% of your stories are fantastic. To get your own copy, you can try Amazon and on eBay, but for the most part, these are used copies. They're not going to find brand new copies on there. You might be lucky, but Amazon and eBay is your best bet if you want to get the Tales Volume 1 comic, but I am not going to recommend you buy every single Epic collection and getting them through there, as it's just super hard to get and just scattered everywhere. It's just a mess. So we'll see how Tales Volume 2 ends up being, so stay tuned for more reviews from me. Please be sure to like this video, comment down below, tell me what you think of Tales Volume 1 in the comment section below, subscribe to my channel Django Fett if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace.